good morning. Muli ang inyong lingkod, Miss Horizon Chaser, natin sa Asian Development Month, na kung saan ay inulunsad dito ang 2 araw na conference hinggil po sa greening financial system and the role of MDBs and IFIs. So alamin natin at tingnan natin kung ano nga ba ang maitutulong ng ADBs. Right, so the climate investment and SDC financing gap and Asian economies pala ng ADB, ito si doon sa ADB estimates ay nasa $1.7 trillion. So dito tinututukan ng ADB yung climate adjusted infrastructure investment and development Asian economies. So yung kanilang pondo na $1.7 trillion, idinidiin ng ADB yung hinggil dito sa climate investment na kung saan kanilang estimate ay nasa $1.7 trillion a year na kailangan ito para sa climate adjusted infrastructure investments and development Asian economies. Kaya alamin natin at saksihan natin kung ano nga ba ang nagaganap na conference dito sa ADB at nagagaling po sa iba't ibang mga bansa, ang mga directors, para po ay ipahayag kung ano pa ang kailangan nila na matulong dito po sa greening financial system and the role of MDBs and IFIs.
Let me welcome the Chief of Finance Sector, JUNKYU Lee, for a short recap of Day 1 and look ahead of the events today. Thank you.
So with that, thank you very much. Now we will turn to our second speaker, who is my great colleague, JUNKYU Lee, who is the Chief Financial Sector and who has been leading a lot of the work on financing across ADB. JUNKYU is going to be making a presentation on some of the key considerations on ADB's climate finance investments. So over to you, JUNKYU. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruno, and also the kind introduction. Actually, the photo here, as you see, is 10 years ago. Please, it looks like a pretty young. We shared is, I actually raised that what was the famous one of the famous word from the movie title and Wizard of. Wizard of what? Wizard of Oz, right? Okay. And then the analyst said, we're not in Kansas anymore, right? So, but we feel that right now we are not really in Kansas anymore, and the impact of the climate change is really real. Like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was a kid, when we feel that, when we recognize that, the impact is very different. And so that is a kind of, I think it is a beginning in our the presentation. And I don't know whether okay here, and over my screen it does not come over, so I kind of keep looking back. Actually, here we, it looks like a little, very interesting title because he opened the stage, Professor VOLZ, and opened the stage for the importance of the GIBs and working together with the GIBs and conditions for the GIBs and also the public GIBs and private GIBs and existing GIBs and also the creating GIBs. And here we try to look for, because we are ADB, we really want to look for the link between these GIBs concept and ADB. So why we need to work together and what can we work together and then how we can work together. So I think it is one of the good way we can consider together if the GIB's concept with the business models is there and ADB is here and ADB's modality, ADB's commitment, ADB's modality and ADB's product, how we can link together. Maybe it's a good the food for discussion also today. And then the interesting what I am telling you is the why we are thinking about this option GIB suddenly. Why ADB, like one of the MDBs, and some people said it's a rockstar, development rockstar in Asia and the Pacific, and why we need to think about that side. And then what is prepared and what has been done so far. So why and what, and then we'll talk about that, how discuss the issues, challenges, some of the lessons. Definitely these discussions will be more realized will be supported, evidenced by the next following two presentations and also the comments. As you know, we have the one case for Connecticut Bank, the other actual case of the UK, the GIB, and two different models. It's a little bit of different. Beginning starting point was very similar, but current status is very different. So these are the whole flows and today. And then the ADB's positioning, this is really the why part. Why? And like I said, we're not in Kansas anymore. The impact on the economic development and the people in Asia Pacific is really large, huge, and we don't need to go back. And we say climate change is real. We don't have a different, the points or argument about that. Climate change is real, impact is getting bigger and huge, how we can handle. As a development bank, it is very natural response. ADB announces a climate bank in Asia to deal with this large damage on the development in Asia and the Pacific. So we announced in 2018, 80 billion climate target, and then recently we also again raised, not the target, but ambition, over this 2019 and 2030 climate finance ambitions to 100 billion. So 80 billion target and 100 billion. We have really have been committed to resolving this issue because we know that the climate change is real, damaging is huge. And then the next one is beginning from this why, it's giving us a rationale to think about the options, think about the approaches, think about the programs or actions. And then we look back and what it has been doing so far. So ADB has been successfully setting up our strategy 2030 and also strategic operational approaches to deal with this climate change. So for example, ADB is scaling up support in these three major areas. One is tackling climate change. The second one is building climate and disaster resilience. And climate change definitely impacted the disaster. So the disaster resilience is also a very important area. And then the enhancing environmental sustainability. This is also the very important, the sustainability side. And then to these, helping this scaling up, supporting these three major areas, we actually put in place these 5 actions to support DMCs from the beginning of the supporting institutional development and framework. This is really the beginning things. And without strengthening, supporting institutional development framework, going to other stages, and the impact and also the handling, the following, the actions, outcomes, we believe that it's not going to be really maximized. So we want to begin the strengthening these institutional development, the frameworks, and moving towards a strengthening partnership network. So that is also the one of the area, and ADB is keen to work together with our local partners and the DMC partners in the national and the sub-regional level. And then the what part, we have 3 things actually. And what we have been doing, this is a sort of common point and we can think about how we work together. First one is a policy-based loan. Second one is a financial intermediate loan. Third one is a sector loan. And I don't need to get into this, detailed stuff and what does that mean, policy-based loan and financial intermediate loans. And I assume that, and most of you are already familiar with this one. So these are the sort of things what we have been doing so far. And then we are thinking how we can work together with these GIBs, Green Investment Banks, or the local or national or the regional financial institutions and really towards supporting seriously making the economy towards a net zero. And the next one is another, okay. So based on this ADB's modality, I just want to share the example, specific example. So this is some of the area we're thinking and working together with the GIBs or financial institutions who are working very hard towards a net zero. And in that case, for example, the 2022 and the climate change PBL was approved. And this climate change PBL is basically to deliver its nationally determined contributions and also to transform vulnerable sectors and toward the climate resilient and low carbon economy. So this PBL plays a key role and to help the DMCs and deliver its own MDCs and nationally determined contributions, also transform their all vulnerable sectors to strengthen and deal with this climate change. And it also includes definitely the policy reforms, that's a condition. And then next one is another, we think together, how we can work together is the financial intermediate loans, one of our strong interests. This financial intermediate loans basically MDB lending through financial intermediate loans. And then this actually can play a various roles, including the catalyzing, scaling up, and also accelerating this net zero, all these transitions. We actually have been doing, and ADB has been doing this financial intermediate loans, and I think probably the DG BRUNO also has been one of the best person to tell about it, and also we have super senior director, and Christine is also here and is probably talking about its importance of some of these financial intermediate loans. And then the examples, and we want to share, for example, the last year we approved SDG Indonesia, one green finance facility. So this is kind of function of MDB, a function of GIBs and its facility. So ADB lend the money and the government lend the money to this specific facility. This is a state-owned infrastructure financing institution. So these are the sort of the structure and how we work together with this the financial intermediate loans is one of the consideration we properly work together with the GIBs or financial institutions at the national level and the regional level, very serious about the net zero. And another example, rooftop solar power generation projects in Sri Lanka. This is also ADB provider funding, and then it is to establish a lending facility. So this to support and rooftop solar financing. And when you look at it, I underlined that, it began from 2017. By the end of 2019, 2,081 sub-projects have been approved, amounting to 23.5 megawatts at that level. It's national level and the local level. This is really amazing collaboration platform, we believe so. And then the how part. How part is based on this why climate change is real and then what we have been doing so far. This how part is very interesting part. And actually, whether we want to help or work together with existing institutions or we want to help create the new institutions, it really depends on the local context. And there is no one size fits all. So important thing is that how we work together, how we work together, what kind of assistance we provide, including lendings and equities and equity investment, also technical assistance and all other setting up from the beginning of the journey of the setting up and strengthening the framework and to the external collaboration. I think these are the part of that. But one thing I'd like to share with you, almost time is up, and these issues, how we work together, and especially for whether these GIBs, MDBs, ADBs can help GIB leverage public funds, how much we can leverage, and also how much we can help GIBs can showcase the financial viability of this whole project, or how we can help transform the financial sector and also localizing SDGs, because the green investment banks working together with the local community, they know households, they know MSMEs and SMEs in the local community. So it is really win-win solutions if we set up some sort of collaboration platform, closely work together, and through our ADBs modalities, we just mentioned the PBLs and FIRs and sector development loans. So here, I think we are pretty much sure, and based on these two the presentations, and next stage, and we will learn very specific cases and the products, and from this, the US case, Connecticut Bank case, and also the UK, the GIBs. And so I think I will stop, and then you give the podium to
Climate Bank for the region, focusing a little bit on some of the instruments, PBLs, FILs, and bringing some brief examples of how we work in two particular countries, Indonesia and Sri Lanka. So thank you very much for that. Next, we will turn to our discussant, who is none other than Mr. PAVIT RAMACHANDRAN. He will be joining us virtually. PAVIT is currently the country director for the Mongolia resident mission. And is now country director designate for the Philippine country office. So without further ado, PAVIT, over to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. Very pleased to be here. Let me first commend the two presenters, Dr. ULRICH and JUNKYU, my good friend, for their insightful presentations. I think certainly from Dr. ULRICH, there was a compelling case made for the establishment of green investment banks in what is now the emerging ecosystem around green finance to address some of the constraints we know about fiscal space, constrained budgets, even looking ahead into the near future, to unleash entrepreneurship, to catalyze and scale up private capital, and to demonstrate the viability of green projects more generally. Let me share my own thoughts on how ADB can support DMCs in promoting green and sustainable development. And more particularly, I'd like to share some experiences from Mongolia with you, from my vantage point here as country director in the office here with ADB. Needless to say, and I think both presenters made a strong case for establishing that the stakes are really high in the global climate fight. This will be won or lost in the Asia-Pacific region, the region that's most impacted by climate change and is also the world's largest contributor of greenhouse gas emissions as it stands. Asia-Pacific also experiences more weather-related disasters than any other region in the world, and we have seen it recently affecting millions of people. India experienced its hottest ever recorded temperatures just a couple of months back in March, and last year as well. And Typhoon Rai, more closer to home in the Philippines, caused more damage to households, over 1.5 million households, than any other typhoon in recent decades. 100 billion cumulative climate finance, and dedicating up to 75% of our operations to supporting climate action by 2030. We've also committed to align our operations with the Paris Agreement, with both our sovereign operations and non-sovereign operations reaching 100% by 1st July 2023 and 1st July 2025 respectively. Some of ADB's green initiatives include the green and blue bond programs, which are designed to assist in DMC's transition to their net zero transition and to low carbon and climate resilient growth. We also have the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility, which is an infrastructure fund initiative that promotes environmental sustainability. I think the point that was made by Dr. ULRICH that GIBs in the region could be an option to further achieve our ambitious but necessary target of climate finance I think the case was well made, leveraging both public funds and private resources, promoting innovative green investments, and mainstreaming ESG principles more generally. At the same time, I feel it will be important that this really is a whole financial sector, whole of government approach, and including commercial banks, where we see the adoption and embracing of green principles and capacity building more generally towards that objective. I agree with the points raised by both presenters on the necessary requirement of well-functioning public development banks or national development banks and their potential or possible focus on green investment. In particular, a focused mandate, independence, and accountability will be crucial, while ensuring cost effectiveness and additionality will need to be assured. To this end, I must stress that good governance, and this was a point that Dr. ULRICH made, will be of crucial importance. Without this, I think this has to underpin any such transition towards a green investment bank. Let me just give you an example in Mongolia. The Development Bank of Mongolia, a state-owned enterprise focused on promoting export-oriented SMEs and long-term infrastructure development, has had significant governance issues. And the immediate priority from the government side is to clean up the balance sheet, recover non-performing loans, while reforming corporate governance, legal and regulatory environment, and associated business plans and practices in the medium term. Once such corporate governance has been improved and a restructuring plan is prepared, DBM can then, or the Development Bank of Mongolia, can possibly then start focusing its mandate on promoting green investments in Mongolia. However, this transition will take time and will need full commitment from the authorities and comprehensive planning. So, I mean, this goes back to the point that ULRICH was making about context being everything. So, I mean, I think the Mongolia example just is a case in point in that regard. But we do have a viable alternative. The Mongolian Green Finance Corporation, or MGFC, could be an alternative that could work in the near term. The government would need to complete the process of making equity investments into MGFC, which has already been capitalized by the Green Climate Fund through both equity and grant investments and local commercial banks. The intention is for this to serve as a joint public-private finance national vehicle to overcome some of the constraints around climate change mitigation and focus investments towards a green, affordable, and gender-inclusive financing for households and energy-efficient technology through wholesale finance. So just to end, let me just say that ADB can support green and sustainable development in our DMCs in many ways, some of which we heard from JUNKYU. But let me stress 3 points here. First, capacity building will be needed. More generally, green taxonomies, green project identification, tagging, and monitoring. Our technical assistance support can help DMCs build up capacity in these regards. This will be important to actually build a robust pipeline of green projects looking ahead. Second, policy-based loans can be utilized to leverage crucial reforms over the medium term and to promote necessary policy actions. JUNKYU mentioned the PBL in the Philippines, the first of its kind focused on climate change. Mongolia is now preparing for a climate PBL next year. We also have another modality, the multi-tranche financing facility. That's, I think, JUNKYU, you didn't mention that in your list, but the idea here is to look at long-term programmatic approaches to support a roadmap towards development, and this can also catalyze private sector financing towards climate change transition. And the third, the FILs are a viable option. In Mongolia, we have made good experience with supporting the Credit Guarantee Fund, a state-owned enterprise, through an FIL modality. This is the financial intermediation loans. And the ongoing project has been able to alleviate SME financing constraints by backing credit guarantees since 2015, more or less. And finally, in conclusion, I want to emphasize the importance of leveraging technological advances for mobilizing green finance. It's important to harness innovative fintech solutions, and we're seeing this across the region for leveraging and further mainstreaming green investment. This can relate to exploring innovative financing instruments like crowdfunding platforms, digital and thematic bonds using mobile banking platforms, or the tokenization of debt. We saw the first tokenization of a green bond in Singapore recently, and also through equity and green instruments. So thank you again, and wish you all a productive discussion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, great. I know it says that my connection is unstable, so can you still hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Okay, all right, great. But then it's not showing the slides, but I have a copy of the slides here, so I'll be able to proceed with the presentation. But thank you for the kind introduction. I'm delighted to be part of this event. It's only virtually for this very important discussion about green investment banks, how they can be very useful tools to scale and accelerate investment to help us meet our goals to combat climate change. This is actually my second time working with ADB on this important topic in revenues that are generated through the Green Bank every year. Next slide, please. A little bit about the how we are governed, our governance structure, board of directors. About 1/3 are from the agencies of government or parts of government. You'll have the state, you will have the low income. So there's a cross-section of people who are represented on our board to represent a number of the interests that we have at play when we're dealing with climate investment. And importantly, we have a deployment committee, which that's what we call our risk committee, which meets, if you go to the next slide, which meets 4 times, it says 2 times a year, but actually meets 4 times a year. to review transactions up to $2.5 million. Beyond that, our entire board has to weigh in on the transactions. The staff can approve transactions up to $500,000 for programmatic purposes, meaning that the programs have been established and approved by the board. Now, the next few slides, I'm just going to ask you to click through, just as, and these you can review on your own, but the typical budget committees, you'll have the next slide, it will say the audit committee, and then if you go to the next slide, it will say the joint committee. I do want to stop there for a moment and just mention that this committee is rather important to us because it manages our interaction with our electric and natural gas utilities. In our country and in our state in particular, but it's quite common in the United States for the power utilities and the gas utilities to run programs that manage energy efficiency programs, so that the regulator gives to those utilities the responsibility to make their enable their users of the services more efficient. And so there's a little bit of money that is, again, with the bill surcharge that they use for these purposes to drive incentives into the market. So we work with them, they use their incentives, we use our financing programs to get people to act. Next slide, please. And this just shows how we are organized pretty much around the solutions we want to bring to bear to the market. The home solutions is for ordinary residents in their homes. The building solutions are for commercial as well as residential real estate. Residential real estate being apartment dwellings or social housing. Community solutions really address state and local government type of installations, and our investment solutions relate to our capital markets activities, which are our long-term bonds, our green bonds, as well as we have innovated in the crowdfunding space a regular issuance of a one-year investment certificate, which is available for as little as $100 and for up to $10,000 more generally. So we bring that to market every 90 days, and that allows the public to participate in the benefits of investing in the green climate space. Next slide, please. And this is just represents some of the benefits of our green bank to our local economy. I think it was mentioned by Professor VOLZ that the MDIs have a leverage effect of 9 to 1, I think was the figure that he mentioned. You can see here that our leverage ratio is about 6 to 1, $300 million roughly of public funds that we have put to work, resulting in 1.7 billion of economic investment in our state. And that has resulted in more than 25,000, this number is out of date, more than $25,000 of direct, indirect, and induced jobs, environmental benefits, as well as all of these investments result in greater revenues for the state, and that generates a tax charge as that activity. This can be from wages, this can be from corporate profits, however it's derived, but it's actually tax positive to the state. Obviously, the energy burden is reduced, and one additional fact in the lower right-hand corner that is typically overlooked, public health savings. Because when you have less particulate matter in the air, you have less respiratory impacts for citizens, whether that's asthma, cardiac issues, and things of that nature. So that results in big savings for our society. Next, if you can press one more time, and we were a winner of a Harvard Award in public government, recognizing all the benefits. Next slide, please. This is just a simple schematic of how we work. By doing all these investments, we allow either the business, the building, or the home to use less energy, and it's either generated more cleanly by replacing grid power, which is natural gas, substantially natural gas generated with cleaner solar PV, or we can use energy efficiency to reduce energy spend and reduce energy burdens. Next slide, please. This is how we operate in our programs. We operate basically in 4 ways. We have incentive programs that are required for us to administer by the state. Previously, we administered a solar PV program across across a residential single-family homes. Now we administer a electric battery storage program, and that we do in concert with utilities. But that is the only aspect of our role, which is handing out money. Everything else is financing. And the financing comes in basically three flavors: co-investment, where we will work alongside private capital jointly in a project. Typically, we will be in a subordinated position to credit enhance the transaction. We also can work in the next sleeve there as credit support. This is where we will offer a loan loss reserve that de-risks the transaction somewhat. And the final sleeve over there on the right, you see warehousing. A number of these projects can be small for a bank to take up. And they are particularly in SME type of transactions. These can be irregular transactions, but what we do is we invest them and put them on our balance sheet, and then we can pool them later and issue bonds against them. We have done that before. In fact, we were the first ones to issue bonds for real estate-backed secured transactions in energy efficiency. Next slide, please. And what this shows are the actual programs that are aligned with those sleeves. I already mentioned the battery storage program. The POSIGEN transaction there at the top is solar PV for low income and moderate income families. There are tax benefits that these families cannot take advantage of because low income, they have very low tax bills. So if you get a tax credit, it's not very useful. So POSIGEN was able to turn it into a lease, and we were using our balance sheet to get them started because of the knowledge we have of how solar funds work. And then if you look at the Smart E-loan in the next sleeve, this is where we provide that loan loss reserve, and that has brought in local lenders to the tune of more than $110 million over the last 10 years. So it's really been a very strong program, and what the banks like about it is not only do they get the loan, but they also get the customer. So we get the environmental benefit, and they get what they want in terms of financial benefit. In terms of warehousing, the CPACE transaction is commercial property assessed clean energy. And this is, you might call these rates. In the UK, they call them rates. We call them property tax. But it's a system where there is a special assessment placed on a property in return for financing, so that the financing stays on the property, secured by the property, and will stay there until it's paid off. Why do we do it that way? Because regardless of whoever is living in that property, or doing business in that property, they will benefit from the energy efficiency improvements or clean energy improvements like solar PV that are going to remain on that property indefinitely. So it's a good way of doing long-term financing and getting around some credit issues. Next slide, please. This is just to demonstrate how many capital providers we work with. We work from everybody from a small credit union all the way and the capital markets. So we work across the range, and that's because we match the risk and sector preferences of capital to the projects we support. And it's a blend of capital, but because there are so many different dimensions to these projects, and we have to play matchmaker. Next slide, please. This just explains a little bit more about the Smart E loan. Before Smart E, there were very limited options for homeowners to fund modest improvements to their home. Quite often you would have to take out a secured loan on your entire home just to do financing to improve your boiler or put in central air conditioning. We convinced the local lenders that that wasn't necessary, that there would be very low losses from these particular borrowers, and we were correct. In fact, when we met with lenders more recently, they said these loans perform just as well as home mortgages. Just as well as home mortgages. So we were able to get them to lend longer and at more moderate rates in return for a loss reserve. Next slide, please. You can look at this structure a little bit later. These are just the structural diagrams, but I just want to let you know that's in this package of slides. Next slide, please. Here is the POSIGEN situation. Again, I talked about this, so I'm not going to repeat, but I do want to point out that for a $5 million initial investment by the Green Bank, you can see the CT, which is the abbreviation of the state of Connecticut, results in the lower part of the slide. Nearly $120 million of investment so far and growing. And that's considerable leverage. Next slide. Again, that's a structural diagram, so you can keep going. And I do want to, this will be the last one that I will talk about. This is our joint program with the utilities. The utilities, as I mentioned, they have their own incentive programs. They work with SMEs for a Small Business Energy Advantage program. And what we do is we buy the loans from the utility, and we do that jointly with a mid-sized commercial bank. And that reduced, if you go to the next slide, if you look to the right, it reduced the cost of funds from the utility from 10% down to a low of 3% when interest rates were very low, and now they're hovering at about 5%. So a very dramatic reduction in cost of funds by getting the Green Bank involved with private capital. So I am going, if you keep going to where you see the hydro facility, keep going. Maybe one more. There you go. This is just to show that we also work in larger projects. We have 3 hydro facilities, hydroelectric facilities that we have financed in the state. There's a ribbon cutting, in fact, in 2 days for our latest project that is completed. Next slide, please. And we've also worked on anaerobic digestion. Waste, organic waste is about 1/3 of the waste stream in Connecticut. And so we have financed some digester projects. We intend to do more. Next slide, please. And this is just to signify that we have issued Green Liberty bonds. That's our signature bond. You can go to that website there and find out more about how we have transformed the market for green bonds. Next slide. And this is the crowd-funded transaction that is issued every 90 days to raise money for the Green Bank to fund that Small Business Energy Advantage program that I mentioned with utilities. Next slide, I think that does it for us. Keep going. Thank you very much. There are the websites, and happy to take any discussion when it's my turn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bert, for a very comprehensive presentation. We've seen a lot of the important points that were raised in the earlier presentations about governance. You've presented how your corporate governance structure is functioning, again, bringing the importance of that back to light, the importance of leveraging. and all the many different products that you've been developing, which is so fascinating. So thank you very much for that. Next, we would have two discussants on this presentation. So let me introduce our first discussant. We have the pleasure to have with us Mr. Chowdhury Liaquat, back in 1999, and has worked in the Department of Banking Regulation and Policy Department, as well as other departments. Over to you, Mr. Chowdhury.
As a multilateral development bank like ADB. And I thank Mr. Hunter for informative and insightful presentations. From the Hunter presentation, we see that the Connecticut Bank basically is a quasi-public organizations, and it focuses on clean energy, that is renewable energy, alternative energy, so on. And the Green Bank is helping Connecticut flourish by the offering green solutions for homes and buildings. And we also see the three goals of the Connecticut Green Bank. One is leverage limited public resources to scale up and mobilize private capital investment in the green economy, and strengthen Connecticut's communities, especially vulnerable communities, by making the benefits of green economy inclusive and accessible to all the individuals and families. And number three, pursue investment strategies that advance market transformations in green investing while supporting the financial system. Now I would like to share what Bangladesh banks as a regulator of the country I will share, and in comparison with the Connecticut Bank. Connecticut Bank focuses the green financing to clean financing, and as a central bank of the Bangladesh, and my department, Sustainable Finance Department, is a regulator to guide the banks and FIs with a product. That means we consisting of 68 green products under the 11 sectors, including renewable energy, so on. Connecticut banks uses green bond, but in our country, as a regulator, Bangladesh Bank already issues a circular for policy for green bond financing for banks and FIs. I'll later discuss briefly in the later review. And the green finance, Bangladesh Bank facilitates it to our commercial banks and NBFIs journeys for greening the financial systems in the year 2011. You shown the slide. While we issued a policy for green, we issued a circular to give a target for achievement by the banks and FIs as a 5% of the total investment should be the green finance. And for better outcome and gap between the demand side and central bank desires, central banks created a dedicated department named Sustainable Finance Department in the year 2015. And at the time, we circulated to the banks, they should keep 10% of the CSR fund keep as a climate response for the risk minimizations of those finance. In the year 2017, we issued ESRM guidelines, environment and social risk management guidelines, where we incorporated a environmental and social due diligence checklist. That means one generic checklist we have incorporated in the issuance of the ESRM guidelines in the year 2017. And in the year 2022, we moderate the ESR guidelines by incorporating the one generic ESDD checklist and 10 specific, sector-specific ESDD checklist. And the analysis of the gap between the central bank desires and demand side desires and the bank desires, we come forward to moderate our sustainable finance policy. Listen, in the year 2020, we issued a circular sustainable finance policy for banks and FIs, where we incorporated 68 project initiatives under the 9 sectors. Those sectors are renewable energy, energy and resources efficiency, alternative energy, liquid waste management, solid waste management, recycling and manufacturing recyclable goods, environment-friendly reproductions, green environment-friendly establishments, green agricultures, green CMSME, and green socially responsible finance. Then we already disclosed and circulated in the year 2021 National Financial Inclusion Strategy. This strategy actually is formulated by our government with the assistance of the UNCDF. And in the 2022, lastly, we issued a circular for raising the fund by issuance of the green bond. And if you see to our website, you see that why we issue the green bond policy. Where in the policy we include a green bond taxonomy. And what are the objectives of the green bond taxonomy? These are the climate change mitigations, climate change adaptations, and sustainable uses water and marine resources, transition to circular economy, pollution prevention and control, and protections and restoration biodiversity of the ecosystem. In the bond taxonomy, you will see the 88 activities are there for issuance of the bond under the 8 sectors. That is low carbon electricity, heating and cooling, green establishment and built environment, energy resources efficiency in the industry, low carbon transport, circular economy, and waste, water and water management, so on. And for promoting the sustainable, because as you know that Bangladesh is the most climate vulnerable country in the rank 7th of the world as per the IPCC resolutions. So for this, so the sustainable finance and climate finance is most costly for the economy. So Bangladesh Bank issues to promote the sustainable finance and green finance 3 refinance schemes. 3 refinance schemes. One is Green Transformation Fund, another one is Technological Development Fund, and another one is refinance scheme for investment. Here I showed that what are the performance from the refinance scheme. And lastly, we introduced 5 billion taka refinances in the local currency under the GTF. We expect from this refinance activities per year 35,000, around the 36,000 tons CO2 gas reduce the emissions from these outcomes. So at the end of the session, I actually we want to see our economy, that means 50% of the industry finance as a sustainable finance by the year 2030 and the 100% by the 2050. And my country and my banks is the slogan for green economy is that go green, live green and live for others. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Ali. I think it is as a regulator, and you well presented the what the Bangladesh Central Bank is currently doing, and also compared to Connecticut Bank and all of their the specific policies and the bond and also other products. Thank you very much. It is very touching, the motto, you said about that one. So ADB is finding out how we can, we're so eager to work together with the Central Bank of Bangladesh. Yeah, pretty much some 1 or 2 minutes if it is possible, and we can have your written
once again, and over to you, John.
Funded, set up, and then later sold to the private investors and Macquarie Investment. So we have now Adrian Barnes, and Head of Green Analytics and Green Investment Group, Macquarie Asset Management, and I think it is he's already online. And let me just quickly look at and how I can introduce him. And actually, Mr. Barnes has been with the Macquarie Green Investment Group called GIG, and since joining the UK Green Investment Bank in 2013. And acquired by Macquarie to form GIG, Macquarie GIG Green Investment Group in 2017. So it was sold in 2017, and GIG is now part of Macquarie Asset Management, the world's largest infrastructure asset manager. So let me ask Mr. Adrian Barnes and to present. And Adrian, are you there? Oh, I see Adrian.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
here. Thank you very much.
Happy to have you. Please go ahead.
That's it. I will
Miss Horizon, kailangan ka maghanda kasi ang ating Pilipinas ay pwedeng bisitahin Bagyo, Lindol, pagsabog ng bulkan at tsunami. Maghanda ka at palitin ng mga mahal sa buhay at isama mo na yung mga listeners.
Good morning, Miss Horizon, ito sa ating project Maghanda.
Good morning, Miss Horizon Chaser. Well,